Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Dorenkamp with Managing for Profit on Brownfield, a content partnership with Corteva Agriscience. Our guest today is Ron Geis, Market Development Specialist with Corteva. Welcome back, Ron. Let's start with a recap of how the 2025 growing season went from a weed control perspective.
Well, Mark, every year seems to be challenging, and I'm going to say 2025 was no different. I almost look at it more like a haves and have-nots when it came to moisture. In the Western Corn Belt, we couldn't buy a rain out west to save our life. And then in the Eastern Corn Belt, they couldn't seem to find the shutoff valve for the rain and had trouble getting things planted and sprayed on time. But one thing was for sure, that those people that stayed ahead of weed control were the ones that were rewarded in good, clean fields at the end of the season.
What key learnings can we take away from last season, given all those variables? Growers are thinking about 2026 weed management. So what can we glean from this year?
Three things that come to my mind. First, I'm going to say prevention is usually better and less expensive than the cure. If we can, keep ahead, we tend to be better off. So when I talk prevention in a weed management standpoint, what I'm talking here, Mark, is just good, solid, foundational products, things that last a long time. When I think of products themselves in soybeans, that brings to mind some of the newer products like Kyber Pro or Sonic Boom. In corn, that would be things like Resicor Rev. These products not only have multiple modes of action against our target weeds, but then also have the staying power to give us 6 weeks of residual, and in some cases even beyond to 7 or 8 weeks. The second thing I think about when we talk about key learnings is we need to manage for earlier planted crops. Okay, so we're seeing the advantage, the yield advantage, by planting soybeans early or corn early, but the weeds don't know how to read a calendar. They haven't figured that out yet. So they're still kind of coming on regular schedule. Again, that sort of harkens back to these higher powered herbicides that are capable of lasting longer. And I think it also brings to mind where our weed pressures are. Most of our weeds, or a good share of our weeds, take place on the borders. So we've sort of had a campaign here the last few years of beefing up those borders. Your end rows, which tend to have the heaviest weed pressure, make sure you're using the maximum labeled rates on those end rows. I mean, if you're using a standard rate, I'll take Kyber Pro as an example. The standard rate is a pint per acre. But you can, if your soils allow, you can go up to 1.5 pints per acre. I'd certainly look at that on your end rows where the pressures are the heaviest. And then finally, I'm going to say with the third key learning, when it comes to post, let's make the most. So when we think of our post-emerge herbicides, we want to use multiple modes of action so that we keep weeds off balance and we're less likely to have weed resistance problems. We want to include residual herbicides in our post-emerge. Well, we want to do that because the weeds are going to keep coming after our post-application. So we want something there to keep the weeds at bay later into the season. And then finally, I'm going to say we need to go early on our post-emerge. And I'm becoming a big fan of 3 to 4 weeks after planting and 3 to 4 weeks after your initial foundation herbicide, be looking at a post-emerge application. Now, this seems contrary. I just got done telling you our foundations, we're looking at those to last about 6 weeks. So why am I talking maybe 4 weeks for a post-emerge? What it comes down to, Mark, is your pre-emerge herbicide is going to give you 90 to 95% control. We need to time that post-emerge application to control those escaped weeds before they hit 3 or 4 inches. Once that weed hits about 3 inches tall, it starts growing really fast, and it's hard to take it down because it's in that rapid growth stage. But prior to that, that first ½ inch to an inch might take a week. An inch to 2 inches might take another week. It's just once it hits that 2 or 3 inches, that's when it's off to the races and growing like an inch a day. So when we start talking about those residual post applications, you want to kill the weeds that are there, but you also want the residual control. Controlling the weeds that are there sometimes depends on the system. Like an Enlist soybean system, we obviously use Enlist, and we put some glufosinate with that. But we also want the residual activity. So residual in that case coming from something like Inversa, which is encapsulated acetochlor, bringing us good crop safety. And then that encapsulated product then just drives to the soil to give us further residual once we get the rainfall to create that weed barrier to stop new flushes of weeds from coming.
Where can listeners go to get more information?
We'd ask you to go see your retailer, or if you want to go on the internet, go to corteva.us and then /Inversa or Kyber Pro or whatever your product is.
I'm Mark Dorenkamp with Managing for Profit on Brownfield, a content partnership with Corteva Agriscience.